I guess. I'm not looking for a shipping container in my backyard, if you're wondering.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. So any questions, comments at this time? Any discussion on this notice of motion before we go ahead? Okay, all those in favor of this notice of motion then, that we review this policy? Okay, and that's carried. Thank you. So we will now move into 9.1.2, storage containers, sea cans, and shipping containers. Your recommendation here that the Township of Mapleton Council receive Building Department Report BD 2021-06 dated April 13, 2021, regarding the use of storage trailers, sea cans, and shipping containers be received for information. Moving or seconder on that, please. Councillor Douglas, Councillor Martin. Okay, so Patty, it's your report, I believe.
Thank you, Mayor Davidson. In review of our zoning bylaw that restricts the use of these sea cans to commercial, industrial, and agricultural properties over 10 hectares and limiting them to 3, I'm finding it's fairly consistent, if not a little more liberal than some of our neighbors. We're on par with Minto. North Perth would only permit 1 per property. And again, they don't allow them on the smaller acreages either. It's kind of a complex issue because some bylaws are silent on it and they require you to get a building permit, engineering, and meet with all the other requirements of the zoning. That would be Wellington North. My thoughts on this from the building this perspective is, I think our bylaw is in pretty good shape. Seeing these containers can be unsightly in places if they're not well maintained, then they become a property standards issue. Some people love them, some people hate them. So basically, if we want to change what's in our zoning bylaw, we would have to do an amendment to the bylaw, which we would have to incur the cost on, or make recommendations for any future housekeeping to change the parameters of how we're allowing them. So I basically am looking for the council's thoughts on how they'd like to proceed on this particular issue.
Thank you. So turn this over to council then for questions, thoughts, comments. Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the cost not being recoverable, I'm assuming that's in specific in relation to amending the zoning bylaw. What's the process that would need to, sorry for my ignorance, but to amend this particular bylaw? Is there public meetings? Is that the cost that would be?
Through you, Mayor Davidson. I can also put this to Curtis, but we would have to go through, yes, public meetings. There'd have to be planning involvement and a planning report done for presentation at a public meeting. So that would incur cost through our planning consultants.
Curtis, you have comments on this?
Thank you, Mayor. No, I think Patty's captured the requirements. Oh, and I should note it also any decision of council would be subject to appeal as well. So if you're opening up the matter, certainly there's an opportunity for public input, and we may, as Patty mentioned, we may hear from both sides of support and non-support for shipping containers.
All right. Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So it would seem on the surface that it's the quote unquote unsightliness of the container itself that is the concern. Now, we, like Patty already mentioned, we do have the property standards. If they fall into disrepair, it can be addressed in that way. I guess I don't understand why it can't be treated just like an accessory structure in residential purposes, right? providing that they're, we could keep the same, conditions that the commercial and the ag folks need to deal with. I guess because some people don't like the look of them. I think if they're placed appropriately or they're clad properly, or they can be quite useful. You don't have to go much farther than Instagram. Pinterest. That's the one I'm thinking of. Pinterest, to show initiative that people have for these types of structures, right? When they're no good for their previous use, they're still quite adequate to be used as an accessory structure. So I guess my opinion would just be that I think, given a proper context, I think that, just because you don't have a place of, is it 10 hectares? I'm not sure why that makes a big difference, but so I think that there could be some room for a modernization of this particular bylaw.
How do you want to tackle this? And then Curtis?
Certainly, if that's the wish of council, we can look at changing those parameters. There has been some reports of issues around the safety of these containers, especially when people are storing a lot of paint thinners, or any kind of aerosols, that they're pretty airtight, and any kind of ignition source can cause them to be an issue. I tried to research that and find anything online where I could find a specific issue. I found that through a township report from another township. I couldn't find a specific incident. We could change the zoning bylaw too, that would require buffering to block their view and ensure they're in interior or rear yards and such. So basically, I guess what I'm looking for is direction from council as to how they'd like to proceed, and if they want to incur the cost of changing the bylaw now, or looking at it at a future housekeeping.
Patty, when would that future housekeeping be?
Well, we're looking to hopefully do a pretty comprehensive review this year and have hopefully a draft in front of council by the end of the year.
Okay. So I wouldn't think council would want to incur costs now if we're going to be doing the housekeeping bylaw at the end of the year. So Curtis, Councillor Martin brought up a good point that on Pinterest, he says, Instagram, whatever, there are some of these sea cans that have been changed into housing units. And you can see that even some communities are using them as housing for the homeless. I also know that we have some that have been modified in the county, I believe in Aurora or Fergus, for Airbnbs or something. Do they have different bylaws, do you know of, or is it like when it goes through planning, does this go through planning?
Yeah, in response to your questions, I guess the placement of them, ultimately the zoning bylaw would set the parameters for where they can be used, and or where they can be located on what properties. However, I guess it would go to the building code, and in terms of how they're used and what they're used for. I think there's questions about whether they're not, and I'm getting out of my territory here into Patty's territory, but in terms of, are they a structure, when do they become a structure, do they need to be permanently mounted to a footing or a foundation, those sorts of things when they're used. But no, I've seen other examples where they've been creatively used as well, and I think if that answers your question.
Thank you, Curtis. And Patty, I don't know if you want to jump in on this, because I know there's houses out there that are sea cans that have been changed into homes.
Yes, that is correct, Mayor Davidson. So these buildings, basically anything that occupies the area of greater than 108 square feet that has walls and a roof is a building by definition. These structures fall outside the scope of anything we can create via the code. Therefore, any of these to be used as a dwelling or an accessory structure, and what they're mounted on, would be required to be designed by an engineer, because they are outside the scope of the building code.
Thank you. Councillor Ottens?
Yes, thank you. So this is brought up by Councillor Martin, I'm assuming, because I think, if I understand he has a desire to see these permitted in people's backyards. So if we would change the bylaw at all, I guess, would they not adhere to current codes as far as lot size, accessory structure size, and that sort of thing? Because we don't want these giant things in tiny backyards. So the existing parameters of size and MDS and that would apply to this as well. Is that how I understand it? That would be Patty, I think.
Through you,
Yes.
Mayor. So in town, in a residential lot, your maximum permitted lot coverage that can be allotted to an accessory structure is 10% of the lot. And that 10% is also included in the maximum lot coverage. So some zones you'll have a 40% lot coverage. Of that, only 10% can be allotted to an accessory structure. So that would be within the residential zones, is that 10%, where there's different rules that govern. Once we get outside of the residential, that we get into the 2,000 square feet for the first acre on the outlying lands, and 450 square feet for every full acre thereafter, to a maximum of 5,000 square feet on your lots that are subject to the reduced lot regulations of an ag zone.
Okay, so yeah, so I guess if we're going to alter our bylaw at all, I agree with Mayor Davidson. We should probably wait till this is going to be done anyways, in the interest of saving time, staff time. But do we have to give direction as to what we're exactly looking for as far as changes, recommendations?
I wouldn't, I would think that if council is willing or wanting to make some changes to this, we need to give council or staff direction. We just can't willy-nilly this. So if council decides that we want to open this up and to make changes to it, then we have to give direction. And with that direction could be that when they do the housekeeping at the end of the year, that this is part of it that gets, that's thrown into that for changes. Anybody else? Councillor? Nope. Councillor Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I agree with your opinion on that as well. I think if you would like me to make a motion on top of receiving this for information, that we address it during our next housekeeping, what are we calling it? Housekeeping amendment or housekeeping amendment, that we allow them in some capacity. I would be fully supportive of Councillor Otten's opinion on this as well, that, they should follow, the accessory structure guide. Like, these things probably should be in appropriate areas, right? Even if they're allowed on a residential property, you don't want them in a, 20 by 20 backyard in town, right? It may not be appropriate. So I think the accessory structure language could be appropriately intertwined.
All right.
That was a long
So-
motion.
Well, yeah, you have your motion already there. I'm just trying to look at the motion that you put forward here. The Township of Mapleton staff review the Township of Mapleton comprehensive zoning bylaw, and further township staff prepare a specific report specific to 6.32.1 of the said bylaw. This report provides options of an update, modernization if appropriate. So if all we have to put down is at the end there, and this be brought back as part of the housekeeping amendment or housekeeping changes. Would that be working? Would that work, Patty?
Yes, Mayor, it will.
So we'll just add in that it be brought back to the housekeeping. That Councilor Martin, you wanted to amend your motion then to that? Yep, you're good motion amendment. Councilor Douglas, you seconded his motion. Are you okay with that amendment? Okay, Councilor Douglas said yes. Any more questions, comments from council on this amended motion? All right, then all those in favor of the amended motion? That's carried. Thank you. Good discussion. And we're at item number 10, which is the approval of bylaws. We have here a recommendation that bylaws numbered 2021-029 to 2021-031. Being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute site plan, be hereby read a first, second, and third time, signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with a corporate seal. Mover to seconder, please. Councillor Douglas, seconded by Councillor Craven. Thank you. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Got any correspondence for council's direction? None. So we got correspondence for council's information. There's a number of those in place there. I count 15 of them. That was a lot of happy reading for all those amendments or all those information. Anybody wish to speak to any of these? Let's give you a second to go back through the 15 of them to see if there's anything that tweaks your mind. All right, no one's willing to speak to any of these. We'll move on to item number, Councillor Ottens.
Just going back a minute, thank you. With the bylaw 10.2, did we not defer that one earlier in the meeting? Or am I misreading this?
I'm getting the clerk to look at that now. You are probably right. We'll just double check that.
It was the Van Zoost one.
Yeah, I believe you're right. I was trying to look that up quickly before I was putting my hand up, but I think that's the one that was deferred.
That's kind
All
of, yeah. It's 2021-07, and that's the one we discussed earlier in the evening about the lot on County Road 10.
Yes, that's.
Right, I'm just trying to figure out which one of these bylaws, the 29, 30, or 31.
It should be 30.
30?
Zoidstell Holsteins.
Yeah, the Holstein one?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so we go back to 10.3 then.
For
So 2021-030 is deferred. So we'll go back to the recommendation, then that bylaw is number 2021-029 and 2021-031 will be the hereby read first, second, third time, signed by the mayor, clerk, and sealed with a corporate seal. All right, everybody cool with that? All right, thank you, Marlene, for getting that for us.
Housekeeping.
Housekeeping, good. I'm glad someone's there watching it. Do we have any notice of motions today? Any other business? Nope. All right, so then we'll go to item number 16, which is our closed session. So 16.1, this is the rise and report on the closed session. convened March 23rd, 2021. And I'm going to report out that we reviewed and adopted of the closed session minutes of March 9, 2021. Litigation or potential litigation affecting the municipality, a statement of claim by 21 Maple Street, Drayton. Labor relations or employee negotiations, CAO report on public work staffing. And a proposed or pending disposition of land by the municipality at 46 Drayton Industrial Drive. That was from the last meeting. 16.2 is a closed session. And I have a recommendation here that subsequent to the council adopting confirmatory bylaw 2021-032 and the adjournment of the regular council meeting, the Township of Mapleton Council move into a closed session for the following reason: labor relations or employee negotiations. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Douglas, Councillor Ottens, thank you. All those in favor? And that's carried. And the confirmatory bylaw, that the recommendation that the bylaw number 2021-032 being a bylaw to confirm all actions and proceedings of the council and the corporation of the Township of Mapleton be hereby ready first, second, and third time, signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with a corporate seal. Mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Douglas, seconded by Councillor Martin. All those in favor? And that's carried. So we are adjourned. We'll go into closed. It's going to be a few minutes as the clerk goes in and resets his computer to try to get us back online. So everyone's going to have to log out and we'll log you back in.